Data has become one of the most valuable resources in manufacturing. But how do you turn all that raw data into real business value? My name is Sarah Wickbers. This is Momentum Talks, a show about smart factories. Joining me today is José Figueroa from Atlas Copco, Marie Jonsson from Linköping University, and Jannik Henser from Scania. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, from your point of view, José, why is it so important to use data in manufacturing?
I think data is only important when we start to analyze it and to use it. Like data just standing there without doing nothing, it's worthless. So I think the power of data is when we start looking at it, analyzing, to take smart decisions to improve our processes, to look areas of improvement in our different areas. So that is the power of data, that it's not only collected, but actually using it on our day-to-day.
I agree. I think it's very important that we use it, but it also gives a common understanding of where are we, a common platform to talk about. I remember working in manufacturing, you have these different views and different stakeholders, and if you have data visualized and information, real information, then you can make good decisions and everyone can sort of talk about the same thing and see the production and manufacturing in the same view.
You, Jannik, work very closely with production. Do you have any concrete example of how you use data in your manufacturing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, today the use of data is very important. Working at the transmission manufacturing at Scania, I know about the value of production data for driving improvements. If I now look like 15 years back, in a previous job, I was supporting many producing companies in solving problems and issues. And when we went there in quite critical situations, it was very difficult to get hand on the reliable data. It was spread out over the whole organization, on single computers, in the machine tool, sometimes on a paper in a box with parts. So it took quite a long time in order to get all this data together. And what we are doing right now and what is happening all over the industry is like to integrate the data. And one example from our operations, we are working a lot with cutting tools. These are critical assets for us. They're expensive. We need to use them efficiently. We cannot waste them. So what we did there, we have connected different systems, production data, economic data, the tools from our process planners, in order to combine this information and identify where do we have cost drivers, where are we not as efficient as we would like to be. And then we can put together an engineering team looking at these specific questions, becoming more efficient and more profitable in the end.
And José, how do you use data to create value for your customers?
I think a critical example is we have the smart tools, they produce data, as you said, like torque values, traces, angle values, right? And I think the biggest part that we can add to our customers, either if it's a small company or a big company, is that we can help them to improve each application, each tightening process. We can look at the values, we can look at how the trace looks like, optimize the tightening strategy, put some values in there. In the end, what we want is to produce faster, reduce downtime and take care about quality. And it's really that, like taking smart decisions based on this data that we're producing with each tightening application.
And such data doesn't have to remain just in manufacturing for manufacturing to become efficient also. We can tie it to the product, so the car or the engine or the motor or the aeroplane, and then also have a deeper knowledge of the performance of the product as well.
And I think it's, a smart decision. It's not a decision taken out of the blue or just guessing. Like you have the data to back it up and say, okay, this is what we have to do. So this is where we want to take it. And you have all the evidence behind it to improve it.
And from an academic standpoint, what kind of data do you think manufacturers should gather and how do they use it best?
We create value from data for the business. We become more and more efficient, but also hopefully more sustainable as well. If we can use the cutting tools longer, we don't have to replace them. We're not using resources. We can be more energy efficient and all of those things. So I think that it's also important. The business is always the driver, of course, but also sustainability. And I mean, companies they should consider a lot of different data sources. I mean, the traditional ones are like the machine data coming out, vibrations, temperature, different process-related torques and those kinds of things. But now we also, with sort of the rise of AI tools becoming more and more efficient, like LLMs and those kinds of things, and machine vision, we can gather data from other sources that hasn't been considered before, like engineering information, routines, drawings, all of those things, to help us become more efficient.
You mentioned efficiency, but gathering this non-traditional data, is there anything else that we can gain from it?
I see it as augmenting the engineers, right? I mean, the engineering profession in itself is half an art, right? I mean, a lot of engineering schools have art in their names. And we want to, as engineers, create new things. So here we're talking about supporting humans, doing some of the work that is dull and boring in between, and really supporting us in being efficient and taking good decisions and doing work that is creative.
Do you think it's possible to quantify what's to gain from data, put a number on it?
I think it's very difficult to say it in general terms. I mean, if you take a look at the white papers that are out there, you start with moderate gains from 2% in productivity up to 2-digit gains. I think it always depends on the use case, but I think we can all agree on that the potential of using data is not reached yet.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have to do a lot of maths here, because it's one tightening process here, and then if we scale this up, you are gonna have the cutting tools here and there. So it's little by little that it's gonna add up, but it's those smart decisions that we have to take operation by operation, putting out teams together to look at this. I think it's really hard to put a number out there, but in the end, it's these small improvements that we can look at, right? Mm.
But I mean, white papers are reporting from single digits to double digits, so the span is quite wide. I think you have to, like, if you're a company going into this, see this as a transformational journey, right? You have to start somewhere, making that first step to achieve those kind of higher levels and that kind of compound effect that probably those double digits show. Yeah.
Then it's also a question of the different perspective. If you're taking the overall perspective, like you mentioned, these single or double-digit figures that can be gained overall, I mean, this will lead to strategic decisions. On the other hand, you could also look on the shop floor level, where the value is added, and start there. And there it's quite crisp and clear what kind of efficiency gains you can get. And this creates, I would say, also very good engagement in the organization, if you can show with a clear business case what can be improved and address it from there.
It also requires a mind shift change, because we have to cooperate more together, we have to work as teams. The data, it's there, but it takes different parts of the company to take these decisions. So I think it also helps breaking silos.
And how do you get everybody on board for that?
Oh, I think that's a $1 million question, but you have, in my point of view, you have to decide where to start. You have to decide, okay, are we starting with tightening or with different applications on our hundreds of different processes that we have? I think that's a management decision to be taken, and then you put teams out there and encourage them to take decisions, give them this empowerment to fail and also to learn.
So we gather so much data. Why do you think so much is left untouched?
Manufacturing is always, I mean, it's for me, the pulse of the company, a producing company, right? It's also what brings in revenue. We have to produce in order to sell products, in order to make money. And these kinds of things usually come on top of everything else that people are doing, so it might not be prioritized. So it really has to be a strategic decision with support from the top management. Let's do this. But I also think that like how to get people engaged. Manufacturing usually knows where the problem is, where are we hurting, where are we bleeding, and started working from that, really finding those things that really would help people in their day-to-day work, really would bring value to the people working there. Then I think there's a good recipe for starting the change and really starting using it.
And I think a good way to do this is to run projects together, really to hands-on try to find a solution, to talk about a concrete question that makes it much easier to create this mutual understanding. If you have an IT architect, a business architect, and an engineer sitting together, they come from different backgrounds. They need to create this mutual understanding. And if you set up a project, I mean, you will not only work on this issue, but you also will work on the collaboration, the mutual understanding. And then it's maybe not important that the first project is right. It may fail, but we can learn from this failure, improve, and together find the next step. And I like in this context the saying from Silicon Valley: fail fast, fail often, but fail forward.
You mentioned collaborating between teams, but do you think it's clear who owns the data?
I mean, when we're talking about inside the company, I think it's sometimes not 100% clear who owns the data, but that's maybe not important as long as the data is available and that you have all access to it and can work with this. When you are coming to collaboration in between companies, I think then it's a bit more a delicate question. There we need to have a very good definition who owns the data, who has the rights of this, how can we share it between each other. And that is a question that is better solved early. I mean, we at Scania are very fond of discussing this topic in the beginning because it's difficult to make it later on.
Do you agree, José?
I completely agree. I think you find strategic partners as big companies, and then in the end we care about the end product, right? So I think that's the biggest communication that we have to bridge, and also encourage it to make it happen, because in the end, if a sub-supplier fails, then it's gonna hit the end product and the customer satisfaction, and no one really wants that. So we have to start doing that, and that's why you find good partners to take smart decisions and to improve the processes.
But do you think you can have too much data?
I mean, I think we have to be mindful. I mean, we know that, I mean, data centers, huge data centers, and the increased use of AI, it draws resources, energy, storage, cooling, and all of those things. So I think we have to be mindful. We have to be selective and try to save the data that we think is useful in the future. I think it's a difficult stage we're in, because there's so much development happening that we really don't know what will be valuable later. I think the point that come across here, that we should use the data to bring value, is the first thing to do, to really be mindful and also have that kind of sustainability perspective. Can we do things to become more energy efficient, resource efficient with the data? Then we have this dual gain about it.
And it's definitely, you know, the power and complexity of too much, but I think it has to come on different priorities, setting the first starting point, maybe starting with the most critical applications, the most applications that have had the biggest issues. So there has to be a starting point, a clear goal for that, but also a long-term plan, because if we look on manufacturing, we have 1,000 processes running at the same time, so it's really hard to take a look at all of that. So it comes on, as we were speaking, taking priorities, putting out teams together, and defining that strategic direction.
Then I guess also we see a change in how we handle the data. Before we collected the data, and then very often a person needed to look at that, and then it was really difficult if you had too much data. You didn't know where to start. Now I see that there is, however, a change due to big data, due to AI, which can analyze a vast amount of data which was not possible before. So this paradigm is changing a bit. But then we can come to another question then, how do we do the data analytics in an efficient way, so that the person or the algorithm that needs to make an adjustment later gets the right data in the right format analyzed.
And what do you think is the first step for companies wanting to take part of this change?
Yeah, I mean, there are, from my perspective, 3 different pillars in this. The first one is the digital infrastructure. So you need the right sensors and connectors. You need a good network that is integrating all the systems with each other. A second point is a robust data structure, so that you are storing data in a good and efficient way. I like what we discussed before, connecting the data to a product. The idea of a digital twin is very interesting to see in one process what has happened to the product before, and can we maybe adapt or adjust, and also making it efficient if you have a deviation on product, to find it quickly. And last but not least is the data analytics. There we have the traditional ways, empirical models, physics-based models, but now also large language models, AI, and so on, that can help us to do this analysis.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I think, I mean, yes, we have the technical parts as well. The sort of technical railroad is very important, but there's also an organizational and people perspective here, because data gives transparency. You see this behavior of the system, and decisions can move if we show. There are examples of it moving down to the operator, which is, in my opinion, very good, that the operator can make very informed decisions, but it also affects the organizational structure. You can come across these kind of barriers, and the organization has to adapt and change in order for these decisions to be made at the correct level.
And what are you most excited about with this change?
I think what I'm most excited is to provide this data, but not only to provide it, because our tools can do it and can send it to a server. But as mentioned before, we help our customers to take smart decisions based on this data. We own the tightening process. We are the experts on that. So that really excites me on how we can really improve different applications, different processes. As you say, like the operators, they have a lot of ideas, they have a lot of feeling on what's happening. So little by little, we make these differences on the tightening process. That's really exciting. And I definitely agree. It's a long journey. You have to have all the infrastructure out there, but we're getting there in many different aspects.
Sounds like an exciting journey ahead.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So, thank you so much for joining us today and for helping us understand more about the use of data in smart manufacturing.
Thank you.
Here are some key points. Data is a competitive advantage waiting to be unlocked. Deciding who owns the data is crucial, and get all on board and adapt your processes to implement the change. Until next time, thanks for watching Momentum Talks.